The year is 1835. Andrew Jackson is president. The national debt has reached zero for the first and only time in American history, and war has erupted in Florida, a territory that has only been in American hands for 14 years and has a population of around 40,000 people, with around half of those being enslaved. Almost the entire population lives in North Florida. Imagine being a young soldier who has just been sent into the heart of the Florida Territory. You're from a small town and you're 1,000 miles away. The heat is unbearable. You are harassed by hungry mosquitoes day and night. Your heavy wool uniform sticks to your skin after long marches through dense swamps and thick forests. Your pay is $6 per month or $72 a year. Your rations consist of salted pork and hardtack. You live in makeshift barracks or tents. You have to sleep on the ground with a blanket or bedroll. Life was hard for a second Seminole War soldier, but worst of all was that behind any tree, palmetto, or ravine could be hiding a Seminole warrior waiting to attack. For thousands of soldiers, the war in Florida was an everyday battle for survival. For many soldiers, Florida was unlike anywhere they had ever served. The United States Army was still relatively small in the 1830s. When the war began, troops had to be moved into Florida from other parts of the country. The Second Seminole War lasted for 7 long and grueling years. Around 40,000 U.S. soldiers were stationed in Florida, spread out across camps and forts. There was generally a garrison located roughly 15 to 22 miles apart. This was done so that every fort was within a day's march of the closest. In the early days of the war, soldiers would have to march sometimes hundreds of miles over multiple days to reach another fort. These forts were hastily constructed out of what they had from the surrounding area: logs, sticks, rocks, and branches. These forts varied enormously. Some were substantial military installations with wooden buildings, stockades, storehouses, barracks, and defenses. Others were little more than a temporary wall surrounding a log cabin and A-frame tents. The majority of the forts could not house large numbers of troops. Some officers had wooden cabins or private tents, but most of the enlisted soldiers and militia slept in cramped tents, 6 men each. Soldiers lived, ate, slept, cleaned their weapons, and spent their free time around the same men. The forts also needed constant maintenance. Military life was very repetitive. You had to tend to the horses, get water, cook, repair defenses, go on sentry duty, roll call, clean the weapons, and much, much more. Days were spent with hours of boredom, with the occasional chance of pure adrenaline and a moment's notice. The goal of the Second Seminole War was to remove all of the remaining Seminole people from Florida and move them to Indian Territory in modern-day Oklahoma. Some forts like Cedar Key were used as a troop deployment station and Indian holding station. Seminoles who were captured or surrendered were transported by boat from a number of ports out west. The Seminole warriors did not operate like a normal army that the American troops were used to fighting. They fought with guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run ambushes that picked off soldiers one by one. The Seminoles knew the terrain and weren't afraid to take potshots at the Americans. It was devastating to the soldiers' morale. America would fight a similar war 120 years later. Historians often compare the Second Seminole War to the Vietnam War. Both conflicts were grueling, unpopular guerrilla wars fought in dense tropical terrain, where the U.S. military struggled against an elusive enemy that knew the terrain and knew where to hide and attack. In Florida, the Seminole stronghold was known as the Cove of the Withlacoochee. It is a large area on the Withlacoochee River that is filled with swamps, hammocks, wetlands, and forests. The Seminoles crossed swamps and camped on islands surrounded by wetlands. It was nearly impenetrable. Lake Panasoffkee was another Seminole stronghold. The terrain was perfect for the Seminoles to hide out and elude the army. The U.S. troops were sent out on sometimes weeks-long scouting missions. They took the fight to the enemy. These missions were akin to the search and destroy missions in the Vietnam War. Go deep into the swamps and flush out the remaining bands of Seminole, capture them, and ship them to Indian Territory. There are numerous journals written from the Second Seminole War veterans. We are lucky to have a written account of one of these missions near Lake Panasoffkee in the Palaklakaha Swamp. Captain Robert C. Buchanan of the U.S. 4th Infantry was tasked with the scouting on the west side of Lake Panasoffkee. His journal reads,
"In our canoes with 11 of his men, Prince and Wallen with the others go by land, opposite to Cabbage Island. Canoes very heavily laden. In my canoe, 10 persons with their arms and knapsacks, 1 barrel of beef and 2 barrels of bread. Met a great deal of grain and water lettuce, and finally brought up in a boggy hammock. Mr. Gates was in front, and after a trial to go through a channel in the hammock, the attempt was abandoned. A sort of council was held, and it was determined to go up the Panasoffkee outlet to where the road from Fort Clinch crosses it, and then start by land for Cabbage Island. Landed about 5 p.m. A command was sent across the Panasoffkee to bring Company G 4th Infantry to our camp. They returned at 10 p.m. A small log pen was built to put the prisoners in during our scout. We are to start tomorrow with 5 days' rations in our haversacks. 15th. Started at 8:30 a.m. Left canoes and provisions with a guard of 1 sergeant, 1 corporal, and 15 men. Smith in advance with 20 men. 5 columns. At 10 a.m. came across Major Plimpton's camp. Followed his trail for some time. Found abundant oranges. Our route was through hammock land and sawgrass swamp and cypress. Could not find Cabbage Island and returned to our camp on Panasoffkee. As we passed Plimpton's camp, stopped half an hour, and while there, lieutenants Long and Murray came in from a scout. Alvord left us there. 16th, left camp at 8 a.m. in canoes. My company in advance to find the channel of the Withlacoochee, and Prince's command took 4 days' ration for Page's men. Found the channel where we turned back on the 14th. Found Company F, and Page joined it. Went on to look for Cabbage Island, and as usual, could not find it, and turned back. On our return, I examined a landing about a mile below camp in the Panasoffkee. Found Long's trail of yesterday and a large orange grove. Got back about 6 p.m. We were much disappointed at being compelled to turn back without doing anything. Major Belknap and myself disagree about the point at which we turned back. He says that we were in Jumper Creek, but I think we were in the main Withlacoochee. The stream was about 40 yards wide and a foot deep. Belknap is certainly the most disagreeable man to serve with that one can find. Jumps to conclusions and uses assertion for argument. Coarse in feeling, overbearing in disposition, and vulgar in manner, it is strange that he should be able to impose so thoroughly on Colonel Worth. I find him prudent to timidity and more cautious of his person than a miser of his money. We had not yet got settled in camp when Colonel Worth and staff with Colonel Garland, escorted by Lieutenant Arnold of Kerr's Dragoons, rode up. Colonel W. will remain all night, and Colonel G. returns to Major Plimpton's camp. Some men of the 8th found a field of corn and pumpkins in it. This afternoon, about 1/2 of a mile from camp, the corn had been hoed within 2 days. 17th, Colonel Worth left us this morning for Jumper Creek. I am to proceed with Company 1 to scout a part of the hammock round Panasoffkee Lake on the northeast, while Graham and McCall meet me from the southeast. Belknap, with 2 companies of the 8th, will enter the lake by boats to catch them who may be driven to the water by men. Major Plimpton scouting around the southwest. After this, I proceed with Graham and McCall to Fort McClure, where we get further orders. It is said that we had a long scout in the Oklahomkee before us. Left Camp Page at 1:05 p.m. and arrived at Camp Plimpton at 8. Found Dr. Wright in charge of the depot. Alvord joined us this evening at Camp Page, 18th. Broke up the depot and sent the wagons round by the road to Warm Springs under the doctor with an escort of 16 men. Left camp at 7:30 a.m. to scout the borders of the Panasoffkee. About 10, found a trail a week old and followed it for some hours, but finding that it did not freshen, left it to go to the point when I was ordered to meet Major Belknap. Met Captain Montgomery with his and Gates's companies. B has remained with the boats. Left him about 12 m. and at 1 dined in Halleck's old town and in his lodge. Had an orange stick cut there as a memento of the tramp. Proceeded to Warm Springs and arrived about 5:30. Found on our arrival that Colonel Worth, with Colonel Garland's command of the 4th, Major Plimpton's of the 2nd. Kerr's Dragoons and Reeves' company of the 8th had started for Okeehinkee, the guides having discovered a trail only an hour old. I am therefore too late. I find that my presence here was not looked for, so there is an order here for Alvord, but not for me. This I take to be Belknap's doings, as he probably wanted to get rid of me. The doctor and wagons have not arrived today. 19th, sent Isaac to look for the wagons at daylight this morning. He returned at 10 a.m. but saw no signs of them. I fear they have gone to Fort King.
The journal sums up most of the experiences of the soldiers during the Second Seminole War, going from fort to fort, following Seminole trails, marching through swamps, and scouting by boat. The soldiers had a difficult task. The interior of Florida stretches for hundreds of miles. There were few roads, and the area was unknown to most of the men. Most of the time, soldiers were building roads, bridges, and forts. There were around 40,000 troops who fought in the Second Seminole War, a large number considering that the standing army consisted of just 7,200 men in 1835. These men were up against an estimated 2,000 Seminole warriors. After 7 years of war and an estimated $30 million spent, over $1.4 billion today, a small band of around 500 Seminoles remained. They fled into the Florida Everglades, leading to the Third Seminole War. The Seminoles survived in the Everglades. They are often called the unconquered people, having never signed a formal peace treaty or surrendered to the United States. The Second Seminole War is often overshadowed by more famous conflicts like the Mexican-American War and the Civil War. Around 1,600 soldiers were killed. Around 3/4 of those were from disease. I want to thank y'all for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you on the next. Peace.